Okay, let's unpack this. You might have noticed a sort of seismic shift in your digital life lately, right? Apps like TikTok, CapCut, Shane, Temu, they've become incredibly popular, just dominating our screens. And then there's all the buzz around new Chinese AI like DeepSeek actually challenging the big US players. What's
Yeah.
really happening behind the scenes here?
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these apps are really just one facet of a much wider and frankly quite deliberate trend. This deep dive, using your sources, is going to try and reveal China's strategic and pretty significant emergence as a global leader across, well, a whole bunch of high-tech industries. We'll look at the strategy behind it and, the global reactions shaping what comes next.
And it's not just on our phones, is it? I mean, beyond consumer tech, China's reach seems, well, really impressive. What areas really stand out to you in terms of their growth?
What's fascinating here is just the sheer breadth of it all. Take automotive. China has now actually overtaken previous epicenters in car sales.
Hmm.
A lot of that is thanks to electric vehicle makers like BYD. And get this, China's also become the world's biggest battery maker.
Wow, the biggest.
Yeah. And then there's renewable energy. China's responsible for an estimated 80 to 95% of the global solar panel supply chain.
Yeah.
That's huge.
80 to 95%. That's staggering.
It really is. And projections suggest that by 2028, something like 60% of the world's renewable energy will actually be generated there. That kind of market dominance, well, it isn't just a business success. It's like they're building an entire new global energy reality, almost from the ground up.
Okay, that solar panel figure is just incredible. But what about, say, the skies? It feels like China has an equally dominant presence there, too. Drones, for instance.
Oh, absolutely. China truly rules the skies in that area. Next time you hear a drone buzzing overhead, there's like a 70% chance it's a DJI drone from Shenzhen.
Yep.
Yep. And 3 of the top 10 drone makers globally are Chinese. Moving on to advanced computing. It's a similar story. Chinese scientists now publish more research papers in quantum computing annually than any other country. They're even leading the U.S. in some specific development areas.
Really? Leading the
In
U.S.?
some areas, yeah. And in AI, artificial intelligence, Chinese firms are now issuing more patents than any other nation.
Okay, so we've seen the breadth of China's tech reach cars, energy, drones, AI. But how? How did a nation once known mostly for, low-cost manufacturing manage such a rapid and deliberate climb to global tech leadership? This wasn't just accidental, was it?
Not at all. And here's where it gets really interesting. This rise is largely part of a long-term strategic plan, Made in China 2025, which they launched back in 2015. The goal was pretty clear. Shift from being the world's factory for cheap goods to becoming a global tech leader with its own cutting-edge supply chain.
And it certainly looks incredibly successful, at least going by the numbers. Sources like the South China Morning Post suggested something like 86% of its 250 mini goals were ticked off, and some targets like electric vehicles and renewables were apparently far exceeded. But, I mean, given the scale of state involvement, how much is organic innovation versus just strategic resource allocation?
Well, that's a key point. This success really stems from China's unique state-backed capitalism system. Essentially, the government heavily directs investment. It sets the strategic agenda for research and funding. They planned for over, I think it was US $1.5 trillion, and it spent over US $627 billion by 2020. They work hard to entice foreign researchers and often require foreign businesses wanting access to the market to form joint ventures with Chinese companies. Now, that does bring us to a, shall we say, contentious point. The U.S. and its allies have accused China of intellectual property theft through hacking, specifically mentioning U.S. aircraft makers as targets. It's important to state China has always denied these accusations. We're just, reporting on these claims and denials as they appear in your sources.
Right, okay. And the success of Made in China 2025 clearly got the world's attention. So much so that apparently after a few years, the government sort of stopped using the term publicly, maybe to avoid antagonizing rivals. But it was maybe too late. Western nations started imposing restrictions, sanctions on sensitive technologies. So the big question then is, how did China respond to that kind of immense external pressure?
Yeah, that huge external threat, as some saw it, really galvanized China. It forced them into what you call a self-sufficiency strategy.
Right.
There's an old Chinese saying, something like, life always finds its own way out. And Huawei is probably the prime example here.
Ah, Huawei.
Exactly. After U.S.-led sanctions hammered its dominance in 5G, that's the critical next-gen mobile network tech in its whole mobile phone business, Huawei didn't just, fold. They pivoted. They pivoted hard into microchip manufacturing. And then in 2023, they stunned many by releasing a phone with an advanced microchip inside one that many analysts thought was impossible for a Chinese company to produce under such tight sanctions. This isn't just about making one chip. It's a really profound strategic shift. It's just a new, maybe less globalized paradigm for high-tech innovation could be emerging.
And we saw a similar kind of story with DeepSeek AI, right?
Right.
Facing restrictions on the most powerful chips, the firm innovated. They used older chips, new techniques, and managed to build a really impressive AI bot with, well, less money and less advanced kit.
Exactly. And for the U.S., this rise, especially things like DeepSeek and the sheer global reach of TikTok, has absolutely been a major wake-up call. It spurred a pretty significant response. The U.S. government and private firms are now pouring hundreds of billions. There was that U.S. $500 billion commitment for AI infrastructure, for example, into R&D to try and stay ahead.
Especially in chip making, right? That seems to be a key focus.
Yes, particularly in chip making, where China is still considered behind and actually facing worsening progress because of those sanctions. This massive investment isn't just about catching up. It's a strategic pivot. It's towards de-risking supply chains, fostering domestic tech ecosystems. It could potentially lead to a more fragmented global tech landscape.
And it's not just the U.S. reacting, is it? Other places like Germany, Japan, they've launched their own counterplans too.
That's right. So what does this all really mean? I think this deep dive shows us how a very deliberate, state-backed vision, combined with, frankly, remarkable resilience when facing external pressures, has propelled China into a completely new role. A role as a high-tech leader with, let's face it, big ambitions, deep pockets, and plenty of patience.
Yeah, our deep dive has really laid bare this profound shift. It's quite a story of state-backed vision meeting resilience. But looking ahead, what's the sort of broader implication of this intensifying global tech competition?
Well, that raises a really important question maybe for you to consider. As this global tech competition heats up and nations increasingly prioritize technological self-sufficiency, how might this whole dynamic accelerate innovation? Or perhaps, how might it fragment the future of technological progress worldwide?